Alcaraz a win in just 50 minutes.
6-2, 6-1, less than an hour. Carlos Alcaraz didn't just win Doha, he made it look easy, embarrassingly easy. Arthur Fils, one of the most explosive players on tour, stepped into that final with every reason to believe he could compete. He's powerful, he's athletic, he can hurt anyone on a good day. But against Alcaraz, he never had a good day. He barely had a good point. This is what's happening with Carlos Alcaraz in 2026, and the people who know this sport best, the former champions, the coaches, the analysts who have spent decades watching tennis at the highest level, they're running out of ways to stay calm about it. Because what he's doing right now doesn't fit inside the normal conversation about great tennis. It transcends it.
At this age, I've never seen a player this good, this complete.
And even the experts are starting to admit that. There's a moment in sport when you stop comparing an athlete to their peers and start comparing them to history. When the conversation shifts from "he's the best right now" to "we may never see this again."
Thank God for Carlos Alcaraz.
That moment for Carlos Alcaraz might already be here. The most striking thing? It's not just fans saying it. It's not just commentators filling airtime with hyperbole. It's the coaches, the former champions, the analysts who have spent decades studying this game.
I've watched tennis for 50 years, longer in a way.
The people who are supposed to remain measured and objective. Even they are struggling to find the right words. Because what Carlos Alcaraz is doing in 2026 doesn't fit neatly into the usual frameworks. It goes beyond them. Let's start at the beginning of this year, because 2026 has already delivered more than most players manage in a full season. Alcaraz lifted the Australian Open trophy, a Grand Slam title on hard courts in January, the most grueling major in terms of conditions, heat, and mental endurance. That alone would have been the story of his year for most players. A slam won, mission accomplished, take a breath. But Alcaraz didn't take a breath. He flew to Doha, entered the ATP 500, and didn't just win it, he dismantled it. In the final against Arthur Fils, a powerful and explosive player by any standard, Alcaraz dropped just 3 games across 2 sets and walked off the court in under an hour. An ATP 500 final, under 60 minutes. That's not a performance, that's a demonstration. When the experts watched that match, something shifted in the way they were talking about him. Not the usual "he played well today" or "he's in great form this week." Something deeper, something closer to awe, because the numbers alone don't explain what they were seeing. What unsettled them was the feeling the match carried, the sense that it was never in doubt from the very first game. That Fils, a top 10 caliber player who can demolish opponents on his best day, never had a single moment where he felt in control. That kind of psychological dominance, that total ownership of a match from the opening point, is something reserved for the very, very few. Former world number ones have been speaking carefully but clearly. The message keeps coming back to the same theme. What Alcaraz is doing transcends results. It's about how he's doing it. There's a specific kind of excellence that goes beyond winning. It's when a player makes the game look like it belongs to them. Like the rules of tennis were written for their particular style. Roger Federer had it in his prime, Rafael Nadal had it on clay, Novak Djokovic had it for an entire decade on every surface. And now, with increasing frequency, people in the sport are making that comparison out loud. Not cautiously, not with heavy disclaimers, but with a kind of grudging certainty, like they've been holding back and can no longer justify doing so. What makes this especially significant is the context. Alcaraz is 22 years old. He is not in the twilight of a great career, rounding off a legacy with one final dominant stretch. He is at the beginning. The physical prime of a tennis player typically arrives somewhere between the mid-20s and early 30s. What we are watching right now, according to those coaches and analysts, is not the peak. It may be the approach to the peak, and if that's true, the implications are staggering. The technical evolution this season tells its own story. In previous years, Alcaraz was a player of extraordinary instinct and creativity. He could produce shots that no one else on tour would even attempt. Drop shots from behind the baseline, tweeners at full sprint, angles that seemed to violate the geometry of the court. That brilliance was real and it was thrilling, but it came with a price. There were moments of overreach. attempts at the spectacular when the simple would have sufficed, emotional swings that came from playing on the edge of control at all times. In 2026, those moments are nearly gone. What has replaced them is something coaching experts have called structural intelligence. He still has the creativity, it's still there when he needs it, but now it's a weapon he chooses to use rather than a reflex he can't suppress. He is building points methodically, reading rallies earlier, making decisions faster. His serve, which was always capable of being a weapon, now functions as a consistent platform rather than an occasional highlight. His movement is as explosive as ever, but his positioning before the point begins has improved dramatically. He is arriving in the right place because he anticipated, not just reacted. That is the difference between a great player and a historically great player. Anticipation, structure, control. Tactical analysts have pointed to something specific in how he handles leads. When Alcaraz gets ahead in 2026, he knows exactly how to manage it. He doesn't try to close matches out immediately with unnecessary risks. He maintains pressure, sustains the tempo, and lets the opponent's desperation create the errors. That is not a 22-year-old's game. That is a veteran's game. The combination of veteran game management with the physical gifts of a player still approaching his prime is precisely what has experts speaking in tones they usually reserve for legacy conversations. Then there is the mental dimension. This is where the discussion becomes most interesting, because it's the hardest thing to quantify and yet the most visible to anyone watching closely. Alcaraz carries himself differently on court in 2026. Between points there is a stillness, a calmness that doesn't look forced or performed. It looks genuine. Watch the third set of his Australian Open semifinal. After dropping 4 consecutive points, the reset was immediate. Back to the baseline, no visible reaction, next point. When something goes wrong, there's no search for blame. He just competes. That psychological steadiness is arguably the single most difficult thing to develop in elite sport. Many players never find it. The ones who do tend to win for a very long time. And then there is Jannik Sinner. Because you cannot talk about what Alcaraz is doing without acknowledging what the contrast reveals. Sinner is a generational talent. His ball striking is among the cleanest the tour has ever seen. His movement, his reading of the game, his tactical intelligence are all exceptional. And yet in Doha, while Alcaraz was winning the final without dropping a set, Sinner was losing in the quarterfinals, another match slipping away in a deciding set. The gap experts are pointing to isn't in the rankings. Rankings fluctuate, it's in the presence, in the aura that surrounds a player when they walk onto the court. Right now, Alcaraz carries something into a match that most players cannot manufacture regardless of preparation. He carries the feeling that he is going to win. Opponents feel it before the warm-up is over. Phil's felt it in Doha. You could see it in his body as the first set unraveled. He was trying everything and nothing was landing. Not because he was playing badly, but because the player across the net made everything feel insufficient. That is what experts keep returning to. It is not one thing that makes Alcaraz what he is right now. It is the accumulation, the physical gifts and the technical precision and the tactical maturity and the mental stability and the competitive hunger, all operating simultaneously, all pulling in the same direction. When those elements align in a single athlete, you get something that rewrites the ordinary logic of sport. You get moments that people who have watched tennis for 40 years describe as unlike anything they've seen before. In 2026, those moments are not isolated flashes. They are the consistent expectation. The Australian Open showed his resilience. Doha showed his control. Resilience and control are not the same thing. Some players have one, very few have both. The ones who do tend to win Grand Slams in bunches and dominate their sport for years. The experts know this, they've seen the pattern before. And they are recognizing it again now. What does this mean for the rest of 2026? The clay season is coming. Roland Garros, where Alcaraz has already proven he can win at the highest level. Then Wimbledon, where he has a title and an obvious love for the surface. The US Open, where the crowd and the conditions seem to bring something extra out of him. Every major is a genuine target. Unlike in previous seasons where the question was whether he could maintain consistency over a full year, in 2026 the question is beginning to change. Experts are no longer asking if he can stay consistent. They are asking how historic the consistency can get. The calendar slam. All four majors in a single year. It has been done only once in men's tennis in the Open era, by Rod Laver in 1969. The idea was almost never raised in serious tennis conversation because it seemed too remote, too dependent on a perfection that the sport's greatest champions couldn't sustain. But people are starting to say it out, loud now, not as a prediction, as a genuine possibility worth watching. Do you think Alcaraz completes the calendar slam in 2026? Drop it in the comments. From people who are almost never surprised, that says everything. The experts who have spent careers being careful, who have learned through experience that sport humbles every prediction, are choosing their words with precision. They are not saying it will happen. They are saying they would not be surprised. What is happening with Alcaraz right now surpasses results. It surpasses rankings. It surpasses the normal language of tennis analysis. It touches something rarer. The feeling, shared by players and coaches and analysts and fans alike, that you are watching something you will want to remember. Something you will describe to people years from now. Something that exists in that narrow territory where sport stops being sport and starts being something else entirely. He's not chasing history, he's making it. If this is the kind of tennis analysis you want more of, subscribe, there's more coming.